Welcome to another episode of our personal empowerment audio program, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder, and our program today is on the great paradox. It's on how we are afraid to feel safe. You know, it's pretty amazing that people think that we live in a dangerous world. Well, you know, we really don't. It's a very safe world. But with the premise that we live in a dangerous world, people think that in order to feel safe, I need to keep my guard up. I need to be afraid. Because if I let my guard down and feel safe, then bad stuff could happen. So I'm afraid to let my guard down and feel safe. So the only time I feel safe is when I'm afraid. So I feel safe to feel afraid, and I'm afraid to feel safe. Now, think about that for a moment. That is clearly backwards. If the world were really dangerous and we needed something to deal with that dangerous world other than the built-in fight or flight, which we have, which works great, then I could see paying attention to all the possible dangers out there that aren't real. But the fact is we have a way to deal with any danger that becomes real. So focusing in on all the imaginary dangers out there, and that's what worry is focusing on imaginary danger, so that I'm feeling unsafe so that I can feel safe, is absurd. I mean, it's absolutely backwards. What we need to do is feel safe to feel safe, and not feel afraid to feel safe. We need to feel safe to feel safe. So how do we do that? Well, we need to learn that the world is in fact safe and what to do with those feelings of feeling endangered so that we can truly feel safe in a safe world.
For whatever reason, there seems to be an epidemic, especially in this country, of people who are unwilling to admit they've made a mistake and unwilling to say, you know, I really don't know. It's as if that's not allowed in leadership, in corporations or other businesses.
Schools, teachers can't do that.
Government. And yet, wow, I'd much rather hang around with a really smart, well-educated person that's quick to say, I don't know, than someone who obviously doesn't know and pretends they do. Like, I really think Sarah Palin had a chance to redeem herself just recently when she made that Paul Revere remark, and she could have said, boy, did I mess that up, you know. I don't know what I was thinking. I must have been really tired riding around down that bus. And that whole thing about shooting guns and ringing bells to warn the British, can you believe I said that? But she didn't. She, like so many people, confused leadership with faking it. And what did she look like? A fake who just doubled down and said, no, I got it right. Paul Revere really did warn the British not to take our guns away. 12 years before there was a Second Amendment. Come on, you're BSing. We don't want that. It's scary. To realize that other people are faking it, that they're afraid, can be very frightening to you. And I think it's real important right at the top of this program to explain that much of what the brain, and the subconscious mind for that matter, perceive as danger is just confusion. Think about it. In fact, move your awareness from your thinking up in your head down into your body and feel around in your body for what you're calling fear. Might be anxiety or stress or worry or nervousness or apprehension, whatever word you have for it. How much of it is clearly dangerous? Not that much, right? It's just confusion that we think might have some danger in it. It's like, what's dangerous about the dark? Well, nothing. What's confusing? Well, that something could be hiding out there. But the dark in and of itself is not dangerous, right? So confusion in and of itself isn't dangerous. It's a situation or a circumstance mentally and emotionally that we can be aware of and then be quick to say, wow, I'm not sure about this. I don't know, but I'm going to find out.
There is some logic to preparing for the worst, because if the worst happens and you have no preparation for it, then, you know, you're blindsided by it and the results could be devastating. People who fail to prepare are prepared to fail, But focusing on the worst, focusing on all the things that could go wrong, and you can spend your whole life doing that. Worriers do, thinking about all the different possibilities that could go wrong, gives your mind the wrong message. The message your mind is getting is, look at all these things out there. I want them. Whatever it is I'm looking at, it thinks that's what I'm pointing my sails at. That's what I'm aiming my steering wheel at. That's what I'm pointing my compass at. That's what I want. Whatever I'm thinking about, that's what I want. The mind doesn't make a distinction and think, I don't want that. It doesn't know how to understand what that means. If I say don't think of a rainbow, it thinks of a rainbow. It doesn't know what don't think of a rainbow. So when you're thinking of what you don't want, it thinks that's what you do want. And that's the big problem. So when we want to feel safe, thinking about things that make us feel unsafe doesn't make us feel safe. When we want to feel safe, we have to convince our mind we're safe. Now, it's easy to do that. The problem, very simply, is when we're out in the world, our DNA has instructions that say, act paranoid, because that's who we are descendant from. Our ancestors were all those people who, although they felt safe most of the time when they were inside the tribe protected by sentries on the exterior of the tribe, they felt safe most of the time. When they ventured out in the world, there was danger. And most of it was not real. Most of the time the rustling bush was just a wind, but once in a while it was a tiger. And those people who thought, well, it's probably just the wind, they often got eaten by tigers. And those people who thought, I don't know if it's the wind or a tiger, but I'm going to act like it's a tiger, well, they lived long enough to make babies, and we call those people ancestors. So we have it in our DNA that there's a dangerous world out there, and beware of it. Well, that world is gone. We don't have to be inside of a tribe to feel safe. In fact, we're inside the tribe of humanity, and we can feel safe inside the tribe of humanity now. Very, very few dangerous things actually happen. And as I said, we've got a built-in mechanism called fight or flight that's ready to handle any dangerous thing that happens. What we need to do is convince ourselves that what our ancestors experienced when they went out in the world isn't the same world we're living in. And we need to show our brain, literally our brain, that we can be safe in this world, that we can be safe by being safe. We don't have to feel afraid to be safe. We can actually feel safe by just being safe. Now, how does it feel to feel safe? Well, that's easy. The brain knows that real well. It's the feeling you have just before you fall asleep. It's the feeling you have before you start worrying. It's a feeling where your breathing is deep and gentle and rhythmic, and your muscle tension is relieved and it's, relaxed, and there's no confusion, and it's the natural state. It may not be normal for people these days, but it's certainly always been the natural state for people to be in, is feeling safe. So we'll talk about how to actually accomplish that, but understand the conundrum. As long as you think the world is dangerous, then you're going to think the only way to feel safe is to feel afraid, because there's a dangerous world out there, so I better be afraid just in case anything. The only way to feel safe is to recognize that the world out there is in fact safe, and that if any of the minute possibilities of actual dangerous things were to happen, I've got a way to deal with that. My fight or flight will take over. So I can act as if and live in a world that feels safe. And boy, the advantages of doing that are tremendous.
I don't think most of us are aware, even if we turn our attention to the idea of, do I feel safe or do I feel threatened and endangered? I don't know that most people have ever spent any time thinking about the fact that throughout the history of the world, we've felt safe, our ancestors, most of the time. Certainly, there were times when there would be marauding tribes and war. Maybe even lightning and thunder in ancient times were frightening. I'm sure it was. And not understanding nature. And so I don't doubt that there's always been fear. But I think the bulk of our ancestors' lives, they spent feeling very, very, very safe and very relaxed. And they benefited as a result of that. They were more clear in their thinking, more sensitive in their feeling, more in tune with nature and things spiritual. So the idea that we're actually in great danger all the time, relatively high levels of danger 24/7, that's a fairly new phenomena. That's new. That's since TV. It's doubled down since 9/11. And yet, if you put things in perspective, as horrible a tragedy as 9/11 was, nearly 3,000 people being killed in a matter of minutes, more people than died in 9/11 kill themselves every month from smoking cigarettes. More people are killed every month in automobile accidents. You're more likely to be struck by lightning or die from a bee sting than to be killed by a terrorist. And yet, we certainly are frightened of it, aren't we? And willing to go through all these procedures at the airport, take your shoes off and get scanned, and all of this controversy and all of this fear. We're fighting terrorism, which is fear, by frightening people. We're using fear against fear, terror against terror. Who can be the more terrible? Who can be the most terrible, the most frightened? And we've forgotten, I think, that we're really quite safe. At least once you get off the freeway. That's probably the greatest danger that most of us expose ourselves to. Once you're off the freeway, you can get home and feel safe. But do you feel safe? Have you taken the time to say, as you close the front door, now I'm safe? You see, the problem with our basic premise here today is that it's two sides of the same coin. It's the same thing said twice. These are not opposites. The idea that I'm too afraid to feel safe, and if I'm safe, I'll put myself in great danger. Those are both negative. That's not like, well, which one's positive, which one's negative. They're arguments that you should never feel safe, that it's a dangerous thing to feel safe. Think about the trap that we've created for ourselves. You talk about the rat race and the treadmill. What about rhetorically living in a place, or in terms of your mindset or your worldview, where you can never be safe because you're safest when you're not feeling safe? You're safest when you're on guard. You're safest when you expect danger to leap out at you from the shadows at any moment. This is the myth. This is the lie. This is the prejudice that we're addressing here today.
I mean, think about it for a moment. Like, we feel absolutely safe thinking about horrible things happening to us. You know, we absolutely say, like, if I worry about, a tragedy in my marriage or a horrible experience in my career, I'm being prudent. You know, I'm being, like, cautious. I'm being careful. I'm being smart by taking a look at what could go wrong. And so it's perfectly safe to look at all the But should I turn around and look at, like, what's the greatest thing I could imagine, like winning a Nobel Prize or something like that? All of a sudden, that's terrifying. Because if I imagine this wonderful thing and it doesn't happen, then I have to face this horrible experience that I've been taught since the earliest childhood is a terrible thing. Don't ever risk disappointment. Man, we have been fed such a lie about disappointment. Disappointment has become such a powerful force in people's lives. Most people are afraid to dream big. They're afraid to aim at any kind of bullseye because the odds are they won't get it, and if they don't get it, they'll be disappointed, and disappointed is worse than not having even gone for it at all. So it's better to not go for it than to go for it and not get it. It's like, 'tis better to have never loved than to have loved and lost. Somehow that's backwards. It's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all.
You know what Wayne Gretzky said about this? Great line. You miss 100% of the shots you never take.
I thought that was Michael Jordan.
It may have been. Sure, I think he got it from Wayne Gretzky.
Okay. It's true for both of those guys, for sure. You miss all the shots you don't take. That's so very true. So the idea here is that we are terrified of having wonderful thoughts because we're afraid of this thing called disappointment. Here's a big turnaround. Here's where the shift can take place. Not only do we need to move from feeling like the world is dangerous to understanding that the world is safe, which is empirically provable. I mean, it's not like a theory. You know, study the statistics. The world is way safer than it's ever been. But what we have to do is prove that dictum that was laid down by our parents to us in inappropriate parenting, telling us, don't risk disappointment. Honey, don't get your hopes up too high. We wouldn't want you to be disappointed. Getting that idea that it's not a good idea to dream of something that you're not 100% sure of getting, creates the big problem. I'm afraid of the positive thoughts, so therefore I feel more comfortable with the negative thoughts. So therefore pessimism feels more appropriate to me than optimism, because optimism risks this disappointment thing. And optimism is, it's airy-fairy, it's pie in the sky, it's, head in the clouds stuff. Whereas pessimism is pragmatic and real and solid, and I'm like preparing for something that actually could happen. Well, the problem with that argument, of course, is that by preparing for what bad could happen, you create what bad happens. You go where you look kind of theory. So what we're saying is the big shift happens in two changes of consciousness. Number one, the world is safe, not dangerous. And number two, disappointment is a nothing thing. It is no big deal, especially when you have a philosophy that says, I have a very high intention of aiming for and going right toward that bullseye, but I'm not attached to hitting that bullseye. I might get something even better than that bullseye. I might exactly hit that bullseye, or I might get something that doesn't seem to be quite as good as the bullseye, but maybe it's exactly what I need. Maybe it's got within it the lessons I need to learn to really appreciate that bullseye when I actually do hit it. So it's not all about hitting the bullseye. It's taking the journey from here toward the bullseye, because the greatest journey that you can possibly take is toward what you want the most. It's not actually about getting there. It's about going there. It's about moving from here toward there. What's the best direction you can go from here toward the thing that you want the most? And what's so fascinating is the thing you want the most, not the thing you think you should have, but the thing your heart desires, is because all the talents, gifts, abilities inside of you conspire to say, this would be the greatest thing for me, the unique individual that I am, the one-of-a-kind that I am. This would be the greatest thing for me to do and have and be and become.
One of my favorite self-help books is Risking by Dr. David Viscott, who I had the good fortune and privilege of working with in radio years ago, back in the mid-'80s. Risking, David Viscott talked about it's a thick book, too. He goes on about the importance of taking a risk. Now, much of the secret to risking, and successful women and men have figured this out, comes from the fact that you never really lose or fail. That if you mess things up or encounter what other people might see as failure, you see it as an opportunity to learn. And so, like a heat-seeking missile, as soon as you find you're off course, you make the necessary adjustment, and that's a good thing. That makes Steve's point here of using a goal to determine a direction. It's not so much about getting to that initial goal. It's about determining a direction, moving toward that desired outcome, and then as you screw up, make some mistakes, encounter some circumstances you hadn't planned on, you learn from it. And to know that going in, to know that that's going to happen and that these setbacks are not really setbacks unless you see them that way. They are actually step forwards if you learn from these situations and then apply what you learned. So to know this going in, don't you see, allows you to take the necessary risks, knowing that there is no failure. There's no such thing as failure. What if you could take a step back to the point where you could see your whole life in that context? Think of the adventure that you could have, how fulfilling life could be if you just stepped right into it, conscious of the fact that what other people call, boy, I really blew it. Yeah, I got a broken heart. Boy, I never anticipated that problem. You were anticipating and expecting, looking for it, coming at you, ready to embrace it and learn from it as elegantly as possible. So everybody's going to go through it, but rather than be surprised, you waltz through it, you see. This is the beauty of optimal or optimum thinking, not just optimism, not just positive thinking, but optimum thinking.
So the two basic premises are the world is safe rather than dangerous, and number two, disappointment's really a nothing thing. It's worth risking. It's got no real power, especially if you don't get attached to the outcome. You see, the problem we have is that, and the Buddhists talk about this a lot, the pain comes from wanting the is to be other than the way the is. we've got it in our mind that acceptance is a bad thing. Like, oh, I'm not going to accept it. I'm going to fight against it. I'm not going to accept that there's poverty. I'm not going to accept that people kill each other. Well, acceptance isn't surrender in that I give up, I quit, I end here. Too bad, it's too bad, but it's the way. Acceptance is, this is the way it is. I'm not saying this is all right. What I am saying is this is all right. This is all right. It's the way things are right now. I might want them to be different in the future. I got to be okay with the way they are right now because they are the way they are right now. And with that acceptance comes the power to change things. So what we do is we change our perception. We don't have the power necessary to change what's actually happening, the stimulus, but we can always change our perception. We perceive the world as being a very safe place. Once in a while, if we're going into that bad neighborhood, or once in a while, if we're in a situation where, things are kind of difficult, well, okay, it's not always a safe world. But let's create the premise, just like our ancestors all had, that most of the time it's safe. We live in a world that's most of the time safe. They did it by being inside of their tribe with sentries posted. We've done it by overcoming warring hordes and wild animals being out there as dangerous to us. There's just no real dangers out there anymore except those that are so tiny, so minuscule in their likelihood. So we need to feel safe. And then the second thing, as Michael was talking about, and I love David Viscott, he said it so brilliantly, is to take the risks, to really feel alive by going for it big time. It's, why would you aim at anything other than the bullseye, except for, of course, fear of disappointment? I mean, why would you aim for, what would be the fifth best outcome? Why wouldn't you aim for the very, very best outcome? And the reason you do want to aim for the very, very best outcome is because the journey toward that is your best journey. It's as simple as that. It's not about getting it. Sometimes you will. Most times you won't. But I never met an Olympic athlete who imagined winning the silver medal. It just doesn't happen. You always imagine going for the gold, even if you don't get there. It's the journey toward there. So break those two belief systems that you have, that the world is a dangerous place and that disappointment is a scary thing, and then recognize that the way to feel safe is not to feel afraid, but rather to feel safe. The way to feel safe is to feel safe. How do you feel safe? Well, what you do is you let your brain know you're safe. And the way your brain knows you're safe is in three messages. The first message is, my breathing is deep. If my breathing is fast and shallow, my brain thinks I'm not safe. My breathing is held. If I'm holding my breath, my brain feels I'm in big danger. So if my breathing is even and deep, that's the first signal to my brain, I'm safe. The second signal to my brain is that my body has lost its muscular tension. It's not preparing to run or hit. It's, the muscles have relaxed. They've let go of their physical tension. And the third indication that I'm safe is that my mind is in a focused and clear, not confused, not like in the unknown, but rather in the known, this is where I am, I recognize this is where I want to be. I'm physically safe, I'm emotionally safe, I'm mentally safe, I'm safe. And the brain does that every single time you go to sleep. This is not a new thing to ask your brain to do. Every single time you go to sleep, what you do is you change your breathing to deeper and more rhythmic. You let go of all your muscle tension, and your mind goes from all kinds of different thoughts and ideas and anxiety to one pleasant thought, and you fall asleep. So you alter your consciousness every single night of your life. What we're saying is that feeling safe might be as simple as moving just a tiny little bit of the way towards sleep. Give the brain the signals that even if I'm not going to go to sleep right now, it's safe enough for me to. It's safe enough for me to lay down and close my eyes. And you close your eyes, your brain goes, I'm not looking out there anymore for something dangerous to come at me. I must be safe. Close your eyes, take the deep breath, let the body release its tension, let the mind be clear of confusion, and you feel safe. Maybe not 24/7, but you don't want to feel endangered 24/7. The antidote, very simply, is to use your worry in a positive way. Positive thinking doesn't mean only have positive thoughts. It means do something positive with all of your thoughts, including your negative ones. So every time you have a worry thought, you get to go, and then think about what could go right. It's only fair to give what could go right equal time. What could go wrong gets some time. You're going to worry unbidden without trying to. That worry pops into your mind. Okay, you don't want to stop doing that. You want to make it okay to do that because that's a release process, not a reinforcement process. So from now on, when worry pops in your mind, you get to go, Take that deep breath, let the muscle tension go, let the mind go, boy, it's nice to let go of this. And then, now it's only fair to give equal time to what could go right. Like, what's the best thing that could go right? What's the most right thing that could possibly happen? Outrageously courageous optimism, not because you actually need to accomplish that, but because the mind and heart are not moved by small dreams. The bigger the dream, the more exciting the dream, the more magnetism the dream has to get you to do that most challenging thing, and that is take that step, that first step toward what you really want the most.
So if you believe this doesn't apply to you, that you're not one of the majority of people that are too afraid to feel safe, then let me ask you, is it possible that you're afraid to feel too safe? Can we move the TOO down the sentence a little bit? Could it be that I'm willing to feel a little safe? Well, all right, we got a foot in the door now. How long are you willing to dedicate to the practice of feeling safe? Can I get 5 minutes from you?
Do I hear 10?
There you go. You know where I'm headed, maybe 20 minutes, and maybe it'll become more familiar to you as you practice feeling safe. And maybe you find that the time that you allow yourself to feel safe begins to grow and expand. And pretty soon you find that you're best when you confront even real danger, clear and present danger, from a place of feeling safe in spite of the danger. I think that's called courage. You see, a courageous woman or man is not someone who does not feel the fear. A courageous person is someone who faces the fear. They're very aware of it. They face it, and then they move directly into it. And they do it, as Steve said, with a breath, with a slow, deep breath, a feeling of letting go. To move forward, you got to let go. What are athletes always doing? Shaking off that muscular tension. Let it go, right? Hang loose, brah. And then, with that positive mental attitude, you step right into it, resolving the situation, whatever it needs. That's what courage is, right? And again, it's the higher self that you find in paradise that gives you this overarching perspective, this wisdom to expect the unexpected and anticipate that which you might not have otherwise anticipated, to account and adjust for what others would call failure, and as we said before, see it as an opportunity to learn. Make that part of your game plan, and now you see how, as important as a goal is, the adventure is really in the journey, in the learning along the way. It's important to distinguish between the journey and the destination, between the strategy or the tactics and the basic outcome. You know, Steve mentioned the noble truth in Buddhism about setting ourselves up for the vast majority of our pain and heartache by desiring things to be other than they are. Again, it doesn't mean we should not have goals, but then hold them loosely in the palm of your hand. Know the importance of a specific, detailed outcome to determine a direction, but then as you set off down the road toward that desired outcome, you know there's going to be inclement weather, and you're going to meet strangers along your journey, and you're going to learn things, observing as you go. That's the fun. That's the excitement. That's really what's at the heart of what we're calling optimum thinking.
So looking again at these two premises, the world is safe. Other than, as Michael mentioned, driving on the freeway, think about it. Where is there any life-threatening danger in your life? And any given day, what's the likelihood of something really likely to kill you or cause you bodily harm, other than things you do to yourself, like smoking cigarettes or drinking and driving or doing stupid things? But other than that, the likelihood of you getting killed or attacked by something terrible in any given day is incredibly remote. And again, you've got a built-in fight or flight in case that happens. So the world is safe. Do some research on this. Google how safe is the world today. I mean, look at the statistics. Look at the evidence. It's phenomenal how safe the world is today compared to even 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. I mean, the world is amazingly safe on any given day. So get that premise. The world is safe. Yes, there are pockets of danger, and we can be prepared for those when we leave our normal daily living routines. But normally in our daily living routines, the world is safe. And the second premise is that disappointment's not a big deal, especially if, as Michael was just sharing, the purpose of the goal is just as a desired outcome. It's not a need to have it. It's just to set the direction, to give you the motivation to move in that direction. But, you're a guided missile. You might change course along the way. It might not end up being your outcome. But so therefore, you're not dependent upon needing on having to get that outcome. Then there's no disappointment if you don't get it. So the world is safe. And go for the gusto, go for the big time, go for the bullseye, go for it, and enjoy the journey along the way, because it doesn't make any sense at all that the way to feel safe is to be afraid, and to be afraid to feel safe. Feel safe feeling safe, because you are.
And additionally, there's just no debate about safe being a peak performance state. You're going to do your best when you do feel safe and relaxed. That was the whole idea of the slow, those three things Steve mentioned: the slow, deep breathing, the release of muscular tension, and the focus, the ability to concentrate that comes from relaxation.
Closing the eyes helps, although it's not mandatory.
Exactly. There is mindfulness, where if your gaze is softly focused and gently fixed upon things, it sort of goes into, like a computer, it doesn't go off, but it goes into
a sleep mode.
Yeah, sleep mode. Well, you can sleep with your eyes open. We all know the feeling of looking out the window and your eyes are open, and if something jumped, you would see it jump. If it began to rain, you'd be aware of it, but you're really not looking at it. You're looking past it. And so whether you think of these contemplative exercises, this introspection or meditation we're talking about, as something you do with your eyes open or your eyes closed, that's not the important part. The breathing, however, that's the first step of becoming conscious, is I choose to breathe. It's not only good for you to get the oxygen in and the CO2 out, but it brings you into the moment. It breaks the stranglehold that past and future fears have on us, distracting us from the reality of right here and right now. The breath will bring you back to that. And then, like any athlete, physical performance, well, emotional sensitivity and mental acuity also peak when you feel safe and relaxed. It changes brain chemistry, and the frequency of brain waves slows, and you're going to perform mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, in terms of being aligned with your values and your ethics and your real priorities. All of that's going to work better when you feel safe and relaxed. So you've got to begin to dedicate blocks of time, 5 minutes, a half an hour, or as Steve and I like to promote, multiple times throughout the day. You can have these formal sittings where for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour even, you could carve out formally this sitting time to feel safe and be present. But you can do it with a single breath and a feeling of letting go, a gentle focus of your attention, dozens of times every hour. You can use standing in line at the grocery store or the bank, or coming up to a red light in traffic and sitting there for a few seconds as an opportunity to reawaken yourself, you see, to pay attention to what's happening right now in your life. How am I feeling? People ask you all day long, how are you feeling? And you answer without checking in, right? Because you know they don't really want to know. It's just sort of a little dance we do, a little formality. But you may want to know the truth of, hey, how am I feeling right now? Well, you're going to have to pause and check in, see how you're feeling. Are your feelings coloring the way you think? You ever catch yourself in a day being just a grouch, just being ornery, just being nasty, and then you realize, well, I guess I am because I'm sort of angry or frustrated or irritated, and then you dig a little bit deeper. Well, that's a smart process, especially if you dedicate some time to it, rather than try to do that while you're doing other things. You see, that's why it goes on and on and on. If you would sit down for 5 or 10 minutes, or maybe 20 minutes or more, whatever you're able to dedicate or devote to that process, and work it through layer upon layer, what's really going on for me, when you get the insight and the understanding, now you can feel safe and create real safety and peak performance.
So if the world were actually dangerous, then to feel afraid might make some sense in terms of to actually be safe, you have to feel afraid. But given that the world is actually safe, to actually be safe, you have to feel safe. You can't feel afraid to be safe anymore. Now you must feel safe to be safe. And the way you feel safe is to feel safe with your negative thoughts, to feel safe with your worry thoughts. The power your worry thoughts have are to cause you to feel unsafe by causing you to breathe shallower, to cause you to create muscular tension, to cause you to feel anxiety. Well, if you take that power away, and when you have a negative thought, you take a deep breath and release, you take all the power of the negative thought away from causing you to feel unsafe anymore. Now you can have the negative thought and still feel safe. It's just a memory. It's no longer got power over you. So the idea here is the world is safe, your thoughts are safe. The only danger they have is if you let them have the power to cause you to feel unsafe. By breathing deeply, you take away their power. So premise number one, the world is safe, and even your thoughts are safe. Even the bad thoughts you have, the negative thoughts, are safe if you breathe with them. And premise number two is that disappointment is not a dangerous thing. It's a safe thing as well. Risk it. Go for it. If you get a little disappointed, it's no big deal, because with high attention and low attachment, it doesn't matter all that much if you actually get it. It matters that you enjoy the journey on the way. And speaking of journeys, I think it's about time to take an audio journey and reinforce some of the stuff we've been talking about.
So now you can close your eyes, find a comfortable place, shake it off, do some head rolls and shoulder shrugs, and take a few slow, deep breaths, pulling in the strength and power as you inhale through the nose. Just oxygenate, fill up, and hold as you peak. And now as you begin to exhale, just as slowly, create and sense that second part, that letting go, releasing muscular tension, allowing it to fall away. And the third part happens all by itself. Your mind begins to gently go from scattered to more focused. Keep letting go. Breathe and relax, and the mind becomes even more singular in its focus. You're becoming smarter, wiser, more sensitive, more aware.
And you become aware that your world is safe. And it changes how you feel. You really get that the world is safe. And it changes how you deal. You're free to allow your negative thoughts to emerge and be released, replaced by wonderful positive thoughts that bring happiness and peace. You're free to take a risk and go for it. Go for the best you can. Imagine the journey along the way. That's part of the master plan. It doesn't matter so much if you get there. The purpose of a goal, you see, is not so much to achieve it, but to enjoy your destiny of moving toward it. The feelings that you get to feel. Moving toward what you want the very most. That journey feels authentic and real. So the world is safe, and without attachment, disappointment's a nothing thing. So you feel safe to feel safe, and you notice the joy that dreaming big dreams can bring. Practice feeling safe, breathing and releasing stress. Practice feeling safe with happiness. Feel your best. Practice feeling safe, and what you will see is that you actually are safe and live in a safe reality.
Life is a great adventure if you set it up that way. Life will happen. It'll unfold. Much of it you will have contributed to. Some of it you will have caused directly. It's likely you were blindsided by some of it. But knowing that, and balancing your determination to attain a particular goal, result, or desired outcome, with a sense of the excitement and fun of the journey, of the fact that the unexpected will occur. You will have adventures. You will have what initially may look like a problem or a setback. But often you'll learn things, and it'll be worth it, and you'll continue to move forward, though on a slightly modified path with new knowledge, and maybe you changed your goal a little bit. But you're expected to, don't you see? And so you face fear, allowing yourself to feel safe, knowing the vast majority of what others call fear is simply confusion, and as you continue to feel safe, you're much less confused, much less frightened, much less nervous or anxious, and it's a beautiful upward spiral of understanding, promoting feelings of being even more safe, which promotes even more understanding, and now you feel safer still. And life really is a grand and sweet adventure.
You love having your negative thoughts, for you use them to release. And with the breath, you fill that space with happiness and peace. Love having your negative thoughts. It's so safe and easy to do, because just with one single deep breath, you let them pass right through. And you fill yourself with confidence and happiness and joy, and the process of having negative thoughts released is one you enjoy and you experience it, because you're safe. And so negative thoughts, you see, are just a way of releasing them. It changes your reality. It's easy, it's wonderful, it's joyful, it's true. These negative thoughts want out of you, and every time you have one and you take a deep breath and release, then you take the space that was anxiety now and you fill it with peace. It's a wonderful exchange. It's a great trade. And you'll find it's easy to do. Just whenever you have a negative thought, just take a moment, think it through, and then take a deep breath and let it release. And the empty space it leaves, fill with peace. And what you'll find over a very short time is it gets to be easy to do. Negative thoughts, positive thoughts, they all feel wonderful for you, and the side effect you get is that happiness comes through with every positive thought, with every negative thought, with anything you do. Releasing the negative, embracing the positive, and happiness comes through.
Bring this feeling of safe with you back into the room as you think about opening your eyes in a moment and shifting your focus into the exterior world around you. and sort of radiating or emanating this aura of safety, putting it out into the world. Effortlessly, simply allowing the fact that you feel safe and tuned to optimum living. You're just going to release that in a moment as you now begin to inhale a nice, slow, deep breath. Really fill them up this time. All right, all the way. Hold for a moment. And now as you exhale, feel even more letting go. As you open your eyes now, wide awake, alert, back in the room, feeling rested and refreshed and very, very safe.
Yeah, very, very safe, because logic and reasoning determine the world is safe, and because it's insanity to think the way to feel safe is to be afraid. I mean, it's just crazy. So, I mean, I've heard the argument so many times, if I let down my guard, then something bad's going to happen. So the only way I can feel safe is to keep my guard up. But keeping my guard up makes me feel not safe. It's just crazy making. So understand there may be times to feel unsafe, walking in dangerous neighborhoods or whatever. But most of the time, no wild animals are going to be attacking you, nor warring hordes are going to be invading your bedroom tonight. Most of the time, when you're not on the freeway, you are, in fact, safe. And even if in those amazingly rare occurrences you're not, you've got this generation after generation of fight or flight in your DNA that knows exactly what to do if the danger is real. So premise number 1, feel safe because the world is safe. And premise number 2, shoot for the bullseye. Disappointment is a nothing thing.
The experience of feeling safe is so different and so new for many people that when they first begin to encounter it, again, paradoxically, it feels dangerous because anything that's new has elements of things unknown, and that's what fear is. It's not danger so much as things unknown. Even your fear of danger is more about what you don't know about the danger than what you do know about the danger. You see, knowledge and understanding.
Yeah, lion tamers aren't nearly as afraid of lions as I am.
No. Or a snake is just as dangerous to one who understands them, but he or she's not afraid. Yeah, exactly. So knowledge, as Emerson said, knowledge is the antidote to fear. So you can account for this too, and understand that if you suddenly, as you begin to feel safe, have the opposite sense, as if, I'm feeling safer, but at the same time, as a result of feeling safer, there's this nervousness coming up. Well, just breathe and let it go and say to yourself, boy, am I glad I'm getting rid of that.
Yeah, love brings up everything unlike itself. So when you push in the good stuff, it's going to push out the doubt and the fear and that bad stuff. It's okay. It's a purging that's taking place. Just let it happen. Boy, it feels great to let that go.
Just like in the morning after a bad dream or a nightmare, you always want to say to yourself, boy, am I... Well, until I figure out what that's about, I sure am glad I got rid of that. That's what the dream did, was purge all that negativity. So get on board with that concept. And hey, thanks a lot for being with us. I hope you'll use the Send One to a Friend tool on focusedpassion.com whenever you can. Share this good news with other people, especially if someone in particular comes to mind when you listen to a program. All you need is their first name and email. Log in to your account page at focusedpassion.com, and we'll send the link for you. Won't cost you a thing. It's a free service. And as always, be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.